A quick tour of my engine bay. This is originally a 1.6 1998 Mazda MX5 NB, so not an FL, European car, delivered in Netherlands originally, which is where I am still, so that's not really special. First thing I did, which is nothing to do with the engine but with the possibility of putting on a turbo later, is I bought a washer bottle, windscreen wash wipe thing bottle with motor and everything on it from AliExpress, relocating that from where it was suspended above the exhaust manifold. Whoever thought of that must have been out of his mind. I just put it over there on its own little bracket, which comes with a set. 13 euros sent to my house, complete with hoses and mounting material and whatever. Amazing. Don't know how they do it. So the engine in here is a 1.8 VVT from an MX5 NB FL, and the entire intake part, the manifold airflow gauge, intake air temperature sensor, or not gauge, the manifold airflow sensor, the intake temperature sensor, air temperature sensor is gone. The whole plastic piping towards that's gone. Everything's taken out. What I have here is a silicon band and 2 PVC pipes, which I saved from their less glamorous job as rainwater piping, and now they are serving as my intake temporarily. And in there is the air intake temperature sensor from a BMW 325i. This is also one of the sensors you can pick standard in Tuner Studio, and I bought it from DIY EFI in the UK, together with the Speeduino controller, which is now controlling my engine. Over here we still see the wiring of the MAF sensor, the mass airflow sensor. This wiring I will use to power the boost controller, which might in the future come on there should I ever get around to fitting the turbo. I first tried to use an air intake temperature sensor in the manifold, but that heat soaked, so it's still there. I have a blind plug for that, but I didn't get around to fitting that yet. The original VVT engine doesn't have a overflow for the fuel pressure, so I've got one from a Mazda 323, and it's in there. It's on the end of the fuel rail, and so my car has the original return style fuel system the 1.6 had. I'm not exactly sure what pressure that Mazda 323 pressure regulator is. It does have a vacuum hose connection, which is connected to the intake port, so it raises and lowers the fuel pressure with the manifold pressure. This I want because of the turbo. Should I ever get around to fitting that, then the pressure will rise in the manifold and the pressure will rise in the fuel rail as well. You can't really see them. I don't think I can get any close up in there. I fitted the yellow fuel injectors from a Mazda RX-8, 450 cubic centimeters of flow per minute they are, I think. At least that's the setting I used in the software, and it worked with the computer. And over here we see my wideband sensor controller, Spartan 2 by 14.7. I used the wiring that originally comes for the exhaust gas recirculation valve. That one is no longer on there. I put a little blank plate down there where that valve used to be. On the manifold, exhaust manifold, where the exit was, you can't see that now, there was an exit tube sticking out there. I cut that off and welded it shut, so there's no exhaust gas to be recirculated. And so this wiring, the blue one is the sensor wire, which is the original O2 sensor wire. It goes to the ECU. The other ones are also going to the ECU, and there is a little solenoid there which I integrated, and the ECU now tells the solenoid to switch after 20 seconds after it reaches 500 RPM or higher. So if I'm still starting or I'm not doing anything, I just switched on the car electrically. The relay is not doing anything, and the controller is not doing anything either. Once the engine starts, the computer starts counting and says in 20 seconds, okay, everything's running smoothly, everything's happy. Let's now switch on the wideband controller. This saves your wideband sensor if it's heating while not in use, or if it's heating while being splattered with all kind of condensation which gathered in your exhaust while the car cooled down at night. The sensor will kill itself rather quickly, and over here in Europe I just paid about $100 for a new one, which I wouldn't like to do weekly, so I wired this in, and in my topic on the Speeduino forum you can find more details on how I did that. There used to be a canister here that would be for the crank ventilation. I also already took that out. If you want to know how, there's a gazillion YouTubers showing you how to. And I put in a cooling reroute. Normally the coolant comes out here with a little pipe and then a hose, and it goes over here onto the radiator. In this case, the little bracket that was on here, the little exit part that was on here, flange, is on the back of the engine. It fits in there. I did this with the engine out of the car, so that's easy. And then the coolant goes all the way around the engine to there. So it flows in at the bottom, at the lower front part, and it flows out at the upper rear part. So it really crosses the entire engine. And because the coolant came out at the front with the original engine, what they did is they blocked some holes in the head gasket, forcing the fluid to really go up to the back of the engine, then up, and then back out in the front. This cooling reroute helps in getting better flow and getting better cooling. However, if you keep the original head gasket in, the front upper part of the head will not get very little coolant because it's not being forced to go back low, up, and then high back. It is now going across the engine and out the back. So what I did was I bought the head gasket for a Mazda 323, which doesn't have this part but has the other exit in use because it's in transverse in the car, because it's a front-wheel drive car. So the cooling reroute is always a good idea if you're aiming for more power, and if not too much work for you, please switch the head gasket as well to make the system complete again. Switching only the head gasket will not really do anything, might even worsen the situation. Switching to only the cooling reroute might, worst case, even overheat the front of the engine instead of the rear. But I've never heard that actually happening. But while you're at it, and if you're putting in time and effort to build something nice, yeah, swapping the head gasket seems like a mammoth task. It's not really. Just take your time, take a few days to get it done. And if it's your daily driver, don't start on Sunday evening. Start on Friday afternoon when you come home from work. It's doable. A torque wrench is an important part in any mechanical job, but the rest is nuts and bolts and liquids, which I hate. I hate dealing with oil and coolant and stuff, but you have to do sometimes. That's basically what I have in the front of the car now, and it's all working on the Speeduino ECU.